The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Mandi Ellefson joining us. Mandi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Yeah, so Mandi, we've known each other for quite some time, and I'm excited to have you on and dig into the work that you guys do and just your kind of experience and journey building up your company, Hands Off CEO, where you work with agencies and firms to really get back their time, help them to scale their businesses. And I thought maybe where a great kind of place to start would be is just talking about this idea, like the name of your company, Hands Off CEO. What does that mean? What does Hands Off CEO do? And how should people kind of think about that?
Being a hands-off CEO, there's actually 5 different levels of being a hands-off CEO, and we could kind of go into that. But one of them starts with getting out of client support all the way on to actually completely removing yourself as the CEO and being able to sell your business. And a number of our clients love to get to about level 3, where you're able to have hands-off CEO. Level 2 allows you to get the company to run without you for a matter of weeks at a time. And level 3 is where you're able to have the company grow without you. And that is a pretty freaking sweet business to have.
I wanted to ask you about like the 5 exits. Is that the same concept?
Exactly.
Okay. We'll put a bookmark in that for a moment, and then we're going to circle back and dive deeper into it. But I thought just to kind of define that, so you've given a good kind of high level perspective and overview of the idea of a hands-off CEO. I want to kind of dig into one of the things you help your clients to do, which is to really kind of get back time, right? Which is a kind of a core part of being able to be a CEO, is to have time to think strategically, to plan or to work with a team. But there's a lot of things that can eat an owner's time, and they wind up just essentially having a job or being a lot busier than they even were before. So walk us through, from what you've seen, where are the big opportunities for owners to really think about getting back their time, and what are maybe some tactical steps that they can take to actually start to create more time and more space for them to be more strategic in planning, or just to enjoy life?
Right. That's a great question. And that's going to be different based on the stage of the company. And we're working with companies, typically they have at least a few people, up to about 25. That's where we're typically working with consulting agencies. But to be able to get your time back when you're a lot smaller, when you're teeny tiny, maybe even solo, you're really focusing on productivity. You're focusing on automation and those little things to be able to get your time back, right? And those are all relevant. But what happens is you continue to scale your company, continue to grow, and looking to scale your company. What you need to do is really be able to get more productive by getting productivity through other people, not necessarily by squeezing more into your day. In fact, trying to squeeze more into your day and becoming more and more productive is actually one of the biggest things that we see leading to CEOs burning out at this stage, because really what they need to do is like really open up whole days in their calendar, in their work week. And we can talk about that later on too, if we want, but where they have a lot of time to think, a lot of time and space to be thinking and to be generating those ideas, to be able to expand their vision. They need to be able to get a lot more done by doing a lot less. So that means you've got to really get that team in place doing it. And a big piece of that I see missing is not having the sales structure and the offer structure and the pricing in place to be able to actually afford them. So that's one of those things. It's like a multifaceted challenge where to be able to get out of your day-to-day, you need to be able to sell more. The problem is you can't sell more because you don't have the time or the people to actually deliver the work. So it's really this like catch-22 place that a lot of consultants and agencies get stuck in, and it's really challenging.
Yeah, let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. So the distinction that I'm hearing you make here is that the earlier stages for a consultant will be very focused on their own personal productivity, revenue generation, sales, delivering work. They're doing a lot of different things, and they might even have some team members. But there's a line kind of in the sand that is drawn that in order for you to really be able to scale to that next level and to continue growing, it's not about you as the owner and leader becoming more productive yourself. It's about shifting productivity and systems and really like outcomes and output more to team members. When is that time? In your experience, is there a certain level of revenue, certain number of team members? How should people and when should people start thinking about, okay, just me like as a solo or really small team, hustling, just making things happen, growing revenue, to actually thinking about, okay, I need to intentionally really focus on systems and building my team?
It really comes down to what your goals are, because there are some consultants, they want to be solo, maybe have a couple contractors, but they want it to be their show. And that's all that they want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just knowing what your goals are. But if you know that you want to have a company that can be able to run without you, that you can someday maybe be able to sell if you want to, but a company that allows you to be able to generate income that's not dependent on your hours, which is a real company, right? That's where you get into a real company. This is like the sooner you can start thinking that way, the better. But it starts with first making that decision on what kind of company that you want to create. And then from there, just as aggressively as you possibly can, because that's what gives you that freedom. That's what gives you the ability to be able to sell into that capacity.
Right. So take the consulting business owner that is very busy right now delivering on client projects. They do want to grow. They want to scale to that next level. They could try and shift the delivery off of themselves to team members. They could shift to trying to get a salesperson in to do more of the sales, or bring in marketing person to do more of the marketing and lead generation. So there's a lot of options that an owner has. Is there a certain place that you have seen people tend to see better results, or what they should focus on first? Like, should they focus more on delivery, more on sales, more on marketing? How do you think about that? What's your experience there?
Yeah, I'll definitely go through that. And I'll share a recent example from a client that we'll call Sam. So first of all, delegating out sales, especially when you're dealing with high ticket consulting services, is one of the last things you're going to delegate. It's really hard to get out of it. You're going to delegate out certain pieces of it. But I see way too many consultants try to do that way too early in the game. I'm sure you've seen that too, Michael. They're like, this is hard. This is scary. This is really uncomfortable for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and delegate that off to somebody else. And it never works. I've never seen it work before. And the challenge is that it's not defined enough for it to be a process that you could actually delegate out to someone else. In the meantime, as a consultant, as you're figuring those things out, as you're getting better and better at articulating your value, your charisma, your energy, enthusiasm, you can sell it even if you're not that good of a salesperson.
Right. But the founder is always able to sell more effectively than a salesperson would, because of your knowledge, because of the energy that you bring to it. And I think the other thing that you just mentioned, which we've certainly seen a lot, is that one of the challenges in selling consulting services, let's say through a salesperson, is that oftentimes the consulting businesses have too many offerings. There's too much custom in there. So it becomes very challenging. And I know that that's one thing that you focus on. We've seen this a lot as well, where having a more structured offering or a program or a product as offer, selling then becomes a lot easier, right?
Oh, so much easier. So there's a number of things that you want to be doing before you can step into that sales piece. One of those things is dialing in the offer. Like you're saying, going from selling 12 different things, it's totally custom when you're having the sales conversation, which the challenge is that you've seen this, Michael. It's so much easier to go and say, oh yeah, you need this. We'll do this and do this and do this, especially when a lot of the work is coming in through referrals. But one of the things that we look at is, I don't want to go in too much into this because I know we were going to be talking about exits and everything, but really going into what is that top 10% of the work that we can do? Who can we do it for? And then looking at that world-class outcome that you could create, and then looking at that could be our offer. And, going from, all right, we're selling affiliate marketing consulting to, hey, we add $10 million in 3 years for beauty and skincare brands. Like that's a real world example of one that in a matter of a few weeks doubled their lead flow and also doubled the price point that they were able to sell at.
So this is about the power of focus, the power of specialization, the power of going like, yeah, we can, and we see this all the time as well. It's like you have consultants and firms that think volume. It's like, we need a ton of leads. We need to target hundreds or thousands of people. Yet really what you're talking about, and we've seen this firsthand as well, it's like the focus of knowing who is that real dream client, like the highest value client you can create the most amazing outcome for, and then really focusing your messaging on those people, more personalized touch points, more value. And then because you're doing that and your messaging is for them specifically, they also see you as being kind of that premium provider, and then you can support higher pricing.
Exactly. We have seen from this, and we call it, I like that you said the power of focus. We call it the power of ones. One client type, not one industry, one client type, specifically within the industry. We're getting narrow here, right? And then one specific problem, like a painful hair on fire problem, and then one outcome. Not like clarity, none of this stuff. And when you get really clear on that, we've seen our clients be able to between double and quadruple their fees very consistently doing that. And we've seen it up to 10x even.
I want to go a little bit deeper into this, and then we're going to shift over to the 5 exits. But this is an area that so many people have real trouble and a challenge with, right? So you're saying one client type. How do you guide somebody on, number one, really narrowing in to one client type? And you're saying even beyond saying one industry. So like getting really, really clear about exactly who to target when they could, like realistically, they could help many different types of clients within one industry or even multiple industries. So what's your thought and kind of mindset around that level of focus? And then just a second thing that I'll put in there is the challenge around problems, because very often consultants, they don't necessarily know what the number one problem is for their clients. Or if they do have ideas, they might have like a list of 3 or 5 or many different problems, and they don't actually know which is the one. So if you don't know what the number one problem is, how should people lead with their messaging and their outreach and their communications if they're not certain themselves on what that number one problem is?
See, this is a little bit of like an algebra problem, right? So you have the client type, you have the problem, and you have the outcome. The client type can be an obvious one to look for if there's some really clear focus for a particular consulting agency. Sometimes it's more like, we have been able to add $5 million of growth for companies, but like they're here and here and here and here and here. So like you kind of have to look at where the strongest point is. That's what we look at when we go through this process. And this is not an easy process, right? I know that that's why clients work with you guys. That's definitely one of the reasons why we have very advanced marketers who come to work with us. It's a very advanced CEOs who have MBAs. They're not just starting out, right?
Sure. It's a challenge for everyone. It doesn't matter how many years you've been in the corporate world or how big of a business you've built, still like narrowing in when you know that you could serve more, but you know it's going to serve you best to serve fewer. It's a challenge.
And here's one of the things is it's first of all, getting over that scarcity mindset that like we're letting go of all this opportunity if we focus. So first of all, this is not, you don't ever take on clients outside of this. What it is that this is where you're narrow focusing. If you're doing like a very specific campaign, these are your dream ideal clients that you're like very specifically having this offer to, that's like knocking them in the head and they're like, I have to have this. Is the only place I can get this. Like that's what you want to do. And what we have found is that our clients, once they do that and they start getting that kind of response from their market, they're like, and that they're so much more fun to work with and more profitable. They're like, we're not taking on any more of these clients that don't fit outside of this because it's just crazy for us to utilize our capacity for less profitable clients. But you still do. It's a transition. Before you move on, and sorry to interrupt, I just want to clarify for people to really hopefully help. What I'm hearing you say is that if you're just planning and thinking about this, you're likely going to have all kinds of thoughts and doubts, right? And kind of considerations. But ultimately, when you get out into the marketplace and you start having conversations and you start actually like validating that, yeah, there is a need, there are people that I can help that are interested, that validation, those conversations is what ultimately then gives you the confidence to say, okay, well, I'm just going to focus a lot more on this and not pay as much attention to all the other things that we could possibly do. Is that correct? Yes. And I think that there's a lot of mistakes that happen in going and trying to do research that without a solid enough plan for it. Because then you're just kind of sitting there, well, what do you guys want? And it's kind of like, we didn't know we wanted an iPhone, right? We didn't even know it was possible. You've got to imagine up these things for your clients because they're looking for you to have a much bigger vision. And when you have a way, way bigger vision for the outcome that they can have in their business, that's when you have completely eliminated all of your competition because you can show that you can be able to generate outcomes for them. So anyways, you have a little bit of an idea going in, or a lot of an idea. I mean, we like to have, we add $10 million in 3 years for beauty and skincare brands. Like that was the outcome statement that they had. They started changing their marketing to the things that they were already doing. Immediately, they got traction from it. But if you just sit around and have all these conversations, I mean, sure, you can do that, but it's like kind of an earlier stage business. Like when you're first starting out might be what you're doing. But if you can actually bring the market something that you have a pretty good idea, you have a good hypothesis based on what you've seen, then you're seen as the expert. Then they're like, yes, we want to have this, right? The other side of it, you're asking like, how do you know the problem? Well, I like solving expensive problems. I go for where the money is at, right? Because that's what is going to be what makes them motivated to be able to invest. Even if the problem that you're solving is harder to quantify with money, and sometimes that is the case. Like, for example, some of our clients have been in the operations space, and it's harder to quantify that, right? But when you actually do break it down and quantify and help them see how much profit that they're going to be able to saving, how much extra capacity this increases, how much more growth that they can have from this. When you can break that down, now you're selling money. People like buying money.
Especially when they're going to get a lot more back than they're putting in, right?
Exactly. And that comes down to the client that you want to serve too, right? There's going to be some clients that feel that pain so much more intensely than others. And there's some that even if they could feel it the same intensity of pain, there's some that it's $1 million problem for, a $10 million problem for. There's some that it is a $100,000 problem for. Which one are you going to get paid for more? And then also, which is the gap? What is like that sweet spot where you want to do it too? Because like where you want to serve, it's aligned with your mission. That's the other aspect of it.
And when you've seen people who have a hypothesis about an offer that will resonate or a problem they believe the market has, and they go out and it doesn't resonate, or they don't get the traction they would hope for right away, what's the shift that they need to make? Or how do you typically kind of counsel or advise people to deal with that kind of situation when it does come up?
First of all, I want to check their stories because very often they're like, this isn't working. And then you find out, well, how many people did you reach out to? 10. I'm like, well, that's not enough information there. Now, if it was 10 clients that have that specific problem, that's good information, right? That's valuable. But if it's 10 cold people that you have no idea who you are, that never responded, just like, no, you got to run the numbers here. So that's the first thing I'd look at. And I'd look at the hook. Is it sexy enough? Is it actually going to cut through the noise?
No, I was going to say, for everyone, just to clarify. So the hook, meaning the hook in the message, right? The message you're communicating, put out into the marketplace. Is it compelling enough, enticing enough, interesting enough for somebody to actually want to respond to you?
Right. Well, and the other part of it too, is it actually even landing in their inbox? Like, so if you're sending out a cold email, for example, are they even getting it? So that's one thing. And that might mean that you're calling them too, just to double check. I think the number one thing I would be looking for is actually, are you working it? And that's the number one breakdown that we see, is that resistance comes in and say, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to do this. And just like, you know what, put on your big girl panties and just go make the calls. You just got to do it to be able to figure that out if it's going to work and to fail fast. And then the biggest thing is just when you're having conversations, you're just hearing, you have an idea about messaging that you might share. And then as you're talking to people, you're like, oh, that's it. That's the thing. And you just keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it, and then making sales along the way. So that would be my approach to it on a very simplified way to say that.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching Program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
Okay. I want to kind of touch on the 5 X's, so the 5 levels that you mentioned. Before doing that, I have a feeling that I'm going to get messages afterwards saying, hey, Michael, you start asking about, should people focus first on delivery or sales in terms of how to expand or grow in the team? I know you addressed, don't start with sales, right? The founder there, but let's come back. So if somebody is growing, they're starting to reach capacity, they're very busy delivering. What's the first step that they should take to create some breathing room and space for them to be more strategic and keep the business growing?
Thanks for circling us back on that, because this is a very important thing to look at. And the reality is that nobody's really talking about this. They talk about systems, they talk about putting EOS in place and all of those things, which are great, but they're not actually talking about the people component of it. And really, it should start with vision, people, and then process, not like CEO getting their hands in the weeds and building the processes. That's not your job. Your job is to hire people to build those processes for you. The biggest thing we'll see hold back CEOs from bringing their company to say 3 million is a really good operations manager who actually can run the business based on repeatable, proven processes. And not just run the business, but they need to actually innovate those processes. And that's one of the biggest things that we see are holding them back. Companies are struggling to get to 1 million. This is also a problem. They don't have any management structure that is effective. And if they're effective, then they shouldn't have a problem if their offers are selling. And if they have a project manager or something in place that's like pulling all that off of their plate, they shouldn't have any problems getting to 1 million. But we found that there's 5 expectations of a really exceptional operations manager. I just shared one of them. But the reality is that we see even a lot of companies even moving up into the 8 figures, their COO doesn't even provide this level of it.
So what's the real role of that ideal operations manager? So, if we envision the consulting firm where the founder is still doing all the sales, they're very involved in marketing. They maybe have a couple of people that are helping with delivery or admin or social media. That ideal operations person, what is the role that they really play? What should people be kind of looking for and thinking about if they're to bring that kind of person on?
So first of all, and this kind of gets into the exits a little bit, we're kind of like morphing over things, but the first thing you want to get out of is account management. So that's the client communication, the client support role. That's going to be the easiest thing for you to get out of. The systems and structures around that are like pretty simple and straightforward. It doesn't require a lot of strategy to be able to outsource that role. The thing is a really good EA would be able to take care of that very well. So training someone up to be able to interface with your clients, that will free up at the very least 10 hours, but we find it frees up about 20 hours per week for a lot of consulting agency CEOs who are stuck in that. So that's the first one. That's exit 1. Now, they build on each other too, because the exit 2 is operations management. The operations management can also be that person who is the client support. So what we actually do in our Operations Academy is a piece of our Scale to Freedom program that we train and develop the operations leaders to really grow into a really solid operations manager. For more of the senior level people, we're actually helping them grow into a COO or a VP of operations. So that's exit 2 to be able to step into that operations manager role.
To make the distinction, so kind of exit 1 could be like an executive assistant or some kind of an assistant. And really their main function is to take some of the project management or some of the communications around delivery away from the CEO, away from the founder, and handle that. Now freeing up the founder to just have more time for strategy, planning, all that kind of stuff. And then exit 2 is potentially that same person, but getting more involved in overall operations of the business, or it could be a different person.
It depends on how senior level this person is. And I want to make a clear distinction. Exit 1 is not just an executive assistant. An executive assistant is just they're going to be scheduling and taking things off of your plate, certainly a very important role. But I was just saying that a client support project management type of person could be trained and developed from the level of a really good EA. And in fact, that's our favorite way of doing it, is training and developing someone who has great skills instead of trying to hire someone who then you have to go and train out all these bad habits that they have.
Got you. So, okay. So exit then 2 says more operations.
Yeah. So exit 2 is in the operations management. And this is where they're really getting into the manager level stuff. So there's 5 expectations of this. So like 5 aspects of this role to get it right. And I already mentioned one of them is leading the team in building repeatable systems to profitably run the company. So there's a few different aspects of that, like to profitably run the company, right? Repeatable systems, right? The worst thing to have is a manager who's running your business and the business now being dependent on someone else besides you. That really sucks. I've been there before. I think many of us have, and it's hard, right? But what we need them to do is to innovate repeatable systems. So I don't know if what you've seen, Michael, but we see that with fast growth companies, their systems can break down like as early as 90 days. They're breaking systems so quickly. So systems need to be innovated between every 3 months to 18 months, just depending on how fast the company is growing. And the biggest thing that we see that holds back growth of the company is the CEO is constantly being pulled back in to keep on updating those systems because no one on the team knows how to do that. Yes, the whole team needs to be doing it, but you need to have an operations manager who's overseeing innovating that.
So when you're talking about this, I want to get to kind of the level 3, level 4, level 5, just at least at a high level too, so that everybody kind of knows what they are. But for this operations type of person, what are the characteristics or the skill set that is needed? Like, do they need to have project management training? How should somebody start kind of thinking about identifying that right kind of person in terms of their characteristics, their skill sets, any kind of certifications, or what's ideal to have in that high quality person?
More than anything, what we look for in a Colby score is the high fact finder. We look for high follow through, and we look for a low quick start. Those are the main things that we're looking for in a Colby score. Interestingly enough, it's a very similar profile that you'll actually have in other operations leaders too, that are a different role, which is a really interesting thing that we've found over the years. But what you're looking for is someone who can really, first of all, who has the mindset of owning it, that they're willing to take responsibility. They're very good with details, but they can also see a big enough picture. You get along with them. You can communicate with them. This is your right-hand person as a CEO. They're going to get to a point where they're reading your mind and that they're staying 3-5 steps ahead of you. And oh my gosh, it feels amazing when you have someone like this in place. They're like reading your mind.
So, Mandi, you mentioned the Colby A. And for those who aren't familiar, right, this is an assessment that you can take through the Colby Corporation. They have a lot of different types of assessments, but this is called Colby A. You talked about fact finder, so like very detail oriented, follow through. So they're not just going to start something and not finish it. They're going to make sure they get stuff done. So you said high in both those. You said low in quick start. Why low in quick start?
Because if they're high in quick start, they're going to be like breaking things left and right. Like I am like a 9 out of 10 in quick start. You're probably lower than quick start than me, actually, Michael, I would guess.
I'd have to pull up my score. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've looked at it. Yeah.
I'd be surprised if you were more than 7. But just from knowing you, and these aren't bad things. It's just, they're not bad things. It's good things. It's just knowing how you operate. And you don't want someone who's high in quick start. They're going to like jump into action really fast. And they might not think through all the things before doing it. And that's what makes like a lot of entrepreneurs very high quick start. And it's what makes us be able to like get things off the ground. Right. But you don't want someone who's too low and who's like 1. That's going to be somebody who's just, they're going to get so stuck in the details, they won't get anything off the ground. But you need to have the balance there. It's also based on the CEO too. So it's like, I'm giving some generalization here. You kind of have to look across the point. And it's obviously not foolproof, but it's just an indication of what we look for generally in a profile.
Let's get then to level 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to share a couple more things to look for in this operations manager too. So the other thing that you want them to be doing is solving problems before you're aware of them, leading the team in that. Their job is to take your vision and turn it into reality, not bring their own vision. They need to take your vision, really buy into it, and then communicate it to the team and then really manage the team. Their job is to continually looking for ways to increase client quality and be looking for ways to improve profits. And when you have this person in place, that's what allows you to let go of these things. I was sharing with you, I was going to share a story, getting out of delivery versus getting out of sales, and how I've seen in the real world recently with one of our clients. I'll call her Sam. And she had already hired a salesperson. Like otherwise, I would not have recommended that she hired a salesperson, but she already had a salesperson on the team. So I'm like, we'll work with this. And she had an operations manager, but like they were not performing. So she had to let them go. We helped her get in place a really good operations manager. This person's really starting to be hitting these 5 points, these 5 expectations. And it's been incredible what she's been able to do. She's been able to bring in 6 new sales over the past month. And that's not even counting the month before. It was just like she's been able to absolutely crush her sales goals because she has that person to rely on who's actually delivering the client services. And she knows that they have capacity for sales. She knows that the clients are being served well. And yes, she has a salesperson there who's supporting her to do some of the menial tasks. But what she's found is that this person, even though they have all this experience, has just not been able to close sales without her. She's been able to really put him in place where he can be able to generate leads, but he's lining them up, she's knocking them down. And that's what makes a huge, huge difference in the growth.
Awesome.
You want to touch on the other exits? Okay, so.
I do. I want to make sure we have time to fit them in because I don't want to leave people hanging. They're going to go, well, what are the other 3? So walk us through. We talked about kind of exit 1, exit 2. Tell us about exit 3, 4, and 5.
So exit 3, we're getting into the sales piece, right? Now, this is a perfect lead into this, right? Because this is where you're scaling sales. You've gone from like organic sales just within your own network at this point and now moving into a very deliberate way. This is where you're getting into the business, where you're getting out of the business development, a business development team that's lining up leads for you. Your offer is so dialed in at this point. Now you can actually develop the person to be taking over the sales and the high tickets closing if you choose to. I mean, there's a number of things that go into that, but that's basically exit 3. And at that point, now you have a company that can run without you, exit 1 and 2. And then exit 3, you can have a company that can grow without you. So that means you can literally be gone for months at a time from your business and it will continue to grow. The 4th exit, this is client strategy. And sometimes this happens earlier, just depending on the company. This is where you're getting out of the client strategy and you're actually putting in place other strategists. So now the way most consulting companies work is that they hire really high level talent to solve all these customized type of problems. So back when we talked about the offers, we talked about the offers and then we were talking about it all from the perspective of sales and marketing and from the perspective of raising your fees so you had the cash flow to hire people, right? But that very thing that for the focus, this is what we found makes such a big difference in having that clear offer. And then you can build the leaders in your team who actually can help you build repeatable systems for how you're delivering really high level work. And most people think that you can't scale consulting work because it's too custom. And yes, if you're servicing 10 different markets and solving 10 different problems, yes, that's impossible to scale. You do the math on that. There's too many variables.
You require a lot more infrastructure, a lot more resources. It's a whole different endeavor. And it makes sense in terms of what you're talking about, that if you're going that custom route, right, then you're going to have to invest for very high salaries to get somebody who's able to process and think across industries or very specific, unique situations. But hopefully everybody can see that as you develop a more standardized program or productized offer, or you have more guidelines around what you do and you don't do, then when you bring people on, they still need to be smart people and very capable, but you don't have to invest at the highest levels to get those custom people, because you're just able to get people that can follow the systems and processes and of course innovate and deliver on them. But it's a very different level than if you're just going completely custom.
100%. That's exactly right. And that's what allows you to scale. And what we do is we create this client success map at an earlier stage. And then that goes over those power ones we talked about. And having that client success map, that foundation, that's what is actually the foundation for the training. And then you can also bring in really high level experts that can help you build out those systems. And that's actually what we've done at Hands Off CEO. Our operations academy is completely run by another advisor who is exceptional at training operations managers, is way better than I am. And he's built out whole curriculum in that. He has an MBA. He has all of his expertise in that. And then he is training and developing other people that are supporting that as well. So that's what allows you to be able to build in that scale and build in that high touch point with your clients as well, without having to just have really high level people with all of your clients. The problem is that really high level people as well, they want to do things their own way. And it's really difficult to manage quality. More than anything, it's a quality issue. So anyway, that's that exit 4, getting out of client strategy. And then exit 5, this is in executive leadership. Not all of our clients ever even want to get to exit 5. But by the time you're at exit 4, you actually have a pretty sellable company. But at exit 5, this is where you can actually put in place another CEO. And actually you can step completely back and just be an investor in your company. That's an extremely sellable company there. We've had clients who have done that. We've had clients who have taken their COO and actually promoted them to the CEO. And they've completely out of their business. Now it's just an investment for them. And they get to be involved in it to whatever level they want. We've had other clients who've been able to sell their companies, and then they take the same thing they've learned from this whole process. And they've got like 10 other hands-off CEO companies that they're running. It's incredible to see what you can do and stack on. Sometimes that's like keeping the company you have, but then acquiring other companies too. We call it hands-off CEO ecosystems. Yeah, those are the 5 exits. And getting to exit 3 will be about where you can get to $100,000 a month in profits. Exit 1, exit 2, you get to $100,000 a month in sales. Even exit 1. One of the things that I see though, Michael, is that a lot of consulting companies will skip steps early on in exit 1, especially in exit 2, those 2 exits, and they miss a couple steps, even if they're further along and trying to get at exit 4. And then those foundation, it makes everything just kind of crumble apart, even if the company is successful already. But skipping those steps is what makes the CEO continue to be stuck in the day-to-day, and it really stalls the growth.
I love how you've broken that down. I think it's a really powerful kind of path and series of steps for people to work through and think through, a very kind of logical progression. Before, I want to make sure that we'll make sure that people can learn more about everything that you guys have going on, Hands Off CEO, and we'll link to that in the show notes and all that good stuff. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure I can ask you a couple of quick questions that I like to ask all guests if I possibly can. So the first one is, you're building your company, you have your team, you have a lot going on. What are one or two things that you do on a regular daily basis? Maybe it's kind of a habit or routine that you feel leads to your productivity, to your higher levels of performance or clarity, or just being able to be successful?
Planning my day, being proactive about planning my day.
When do you plan your day?
If I'm really on the ball the night before.
Okay, yeah. If not the morning
No.
of, yeah.
A lot of my planning actually will happen like on Sunday evening, where I'll look at the week ahead and then I'll like be planning out what are some of the things I need to have done on individual days. Meditating is also something that's really been helpful for me to be able to kind of help me maintain a real consistency and just like overcome the head trash or whatever things that just you got to deal with in the world, and like being able to rise above that.
When do you meditate typically, and for how long?
Typically in the morning. I used to meditate an hour a day, and I kind of fell off the wagon on that recently. So I need to get back up to that.
Is that an hour, like a chunk of 1 hour, or do you do it a couple times?
A chunk of 1 hour, but if I can't do that, maybe I'll like break it up into 2 different times, in the morning and the night. But it makes a huge difference to do it in the morning. Oh, I didn't mention this one. The number one thing, exercise every single day except for Sunday. I still do an exercise on Sunday, just don't like hardcore training or anything. Certainly that makes your body look better. But for me, it makes my brain function better and for me to feel good. And it's like the key to happiness. Like I wish more people put that as a priority.
I'm with you on that. 100%. Yeah. If I don't get my morning run in or exercise, I definitely don't feel the same. So big believer in that. And then the final question before we wrap up is, over the last 6 months, you can push to 8 months, 12 months, but just a book that you have thoroughly enjoyed. It could be fiction, nonfiction, just anything that you would be like, yeah, I'd recommend this. I really enjoyed it.
It's hard to decide because I love reading, but one of my favorites that I really enjoyed was Draw to Win. That was a good one.
Draw to Win. Do you know who the author is? Try and pull it up, but let's see.
Not off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, Dan Rome, Draw to Win. Okay. A crash course on how to lead, sell, and innovate with your visual mind.
Yes, I used to be a graphic designer and I think that way. I think the way that he's teaching in that is it's such a good book. I love it. We actually integrate a lot of those things into our processes. We help leaders how to visualize and draw pictures to be able to help people, their team better. I mean, I don't want to go too much detail of it, but I love that concept. It's a good book.
Well, I have not had that come up as a recommendation before, so we will definitely link to that as well in the show notes. I appreciate you sharing that. And we'll make sure as well to connect all your stuff here as well. Mandi, thank you so much for coming on here today, taking us through the 5 exits and just giving us a glimpse into operations and how you're seeing people move through this process. You're doing great work and just really appreciate coming on and sharing some of that here with us.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.